There's a silence that feels different at night. Not peaceful, not calm. Heavy. Like something waiting just past the edge of your headlights. You feel it before you see anything. That pull in your gut. That signal you learn to trust after years of learning the hard way. I was alone, driving home on a 2-lane road outside Toledo. No traffic, no music, just the engine and the hum of a day that had already taken too much. I wasn't in uniform, just a black woman in a car at night. And then came the lights. Not just red and blue. No, they don't hit you like colors. They hit you like heat, like memory, like every story you've ever heard and hoped would never be yours. That moment, when your rearview mirror stops showing a road and starts showing a choice. That's when time changes. You slow your breathing. You remember where your license is. You check your hands. You pray, whatever that means for you. And you prepare for someone to make a decision. Not you, him. The man behind the badge. The one stepping out of the car with a smirk like he's already written the ending. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't look away. And that's when it really began. I didn't panic. That's the part that always surprises people when I tell this story. No panic, no yelling, no trembling hands. Just a stillness that I've worn like armor since I was 15. My mother used to say, "Don't let them see you bleed. Don't let them see you beg." And I didn't. Not then. Not ever. I sat in my car, both hands on the wheel, watching the silhouette move behind the lights. Slow, confident, like he had the whole world in his back pocket. He didn't know my name, didn't know my rank, didn't know that I had spent half my adult life commanding men like him in places where hesitation meant death. But he did see something. A black woman, alone, on a quiet road. That was enough. He knocked on the window like he owned the air I was breathing. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, no ma'am. I handed them over without a word. I always keep them ready just in case. You learn that early. He didn't look at them long. He looked at me. That pause, that calculated stare, like he was waiting for something. A twitch, a raised voice, a mistake. But I just looked back, steady. Not challenging, not afraid, just present. That bothered him. You didn't signal your turn back there. I knew I had. But I also knew that wasn't the point. The point was control. His. Step out of the vehicle. My heartbeat didn't spike, but my breath did change. Slower, deeper, the way I was trained. I opened the door, stepped out, and stood tall. Not aggressive, not submissive, just grounded. The pavement was rough under my boots. The air had that early autumn bite. He circled me like I was a threat wrapped in civilian clothes. Have you been drinking tonight? No. Any drugs in the vehicle? No. He made me walk a straight line, touch my nose, follow his finger with my eyes. I passed every test clean, not a wobble, not a slur. And still, he didn't look satisfied. There's a kind of frustration some men carry when the script in their head doesn't match reality. He had expected fear, submission. What he got was silence, discipline. So he wrote me a citation anyway. Improper turn signal. I took the paper, folded it once, and looked him in the eye. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. That, more than anything, was what set the fire behind his eyes. Because silence, when it comes from strength, feels like defiance to the weak. He walked back to his car. I walked back to mine. And as I sat behind the wheel again, I realized something that I've never forgotten since. I had been in war zones that felt safer than that stretch of American road, and the most dangerous weapon pointed at me that night wasn't a gun. It was the belief that he could do whatever he wanted and walk away, untouched. I didn't drive off right away. I just sat there, seatbelt still on, citation in my hand, engine humming beneath me like a question I didn't want to answer. I stared through the windshield into the darkness ahead and tried to remember how to breathe without counting the seconds. Some people think discipline is cold, that it means feeling nothing. It doesn't. It means carrying it all, but not letting it spill. I've stood at attention in the middle of chaos. I've delivered bad news to mothers and folded flags over caskets. I've told young soldiers to hold the line when everything in them wanted to run. And I've done it all with the same expression I wore that night, calm, steady, unreadable. But there's a cost to that kind of control. You learn not to flinch. You learn not to speak unless your words are perfect. You learn to let people underestimate you because correcting them would waste your energy. And you learn to stand still, even when everything inside you is screaming to move. When I stepped out of that car, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of being misunderstood, of giving him one reason to rewrite the story in real time. One excuse to say I was angry, irrational, non-compliant. Because I know how that plays out. My cousin Elijah didn't raise his voice either. They still broke his ribs. My friend Monique was calm. She still ended up in zip ties for resisting, and I told myself over and over again that if it ever happened to me, I'd be ready. But nothing prepares you for the moment a man looks at you, looks through you, and sees a threat instead of a human being. I remembered something from years ago. Basic training first week. One of the drill sergeants, a black woman in her 40s, pulled me aside after a white male instructor barked at me in front of everyone. She said, "They will talk down to you until you make them rise to meet you. Keep your voice low, your spine straight, and your eyes steady. Make them work to shake you." I never forgot that. That night it echoed in my bones. So I stood there, on that shoulder of the road, still, tall. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I refused to let that fear teach him how to treat me. I didn't flinch when he leaned in. I didn't fold when he scribbled his lie onto a sheet of government paper and handed it to me like it meant something. I simply accepted the performance and decided I would write the ending myself. Home didn't feel like home that night. I parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, and just sat there. Porch light glowing, crickets somewhere in the dark, the kind of stillness that should feel safe, but it didn't, not after what happened. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me, like that would keep the world out. The house smelled like cedar wood and quiet routines. My boots landed softly on the mat. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't even turn on the lights. I just stood there, in the middle of my living room, holding a citation I didn't deserve. And for the first time in a long time, I felt tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. There's a specific exhaustion that comes from being calm when you shouldn't have to be. I thought of my niece, 12, sharp as a blade, already learning what to do if a cop pulls her over. I thought of my soldiers, the young ones who watched me every day to see how a black woman in command carries herself. And I thought of my father. He used to say, "Pick your battles, baby, but don't let silence be the reason they think they won." That line sat with me. All these years, I had taught myself how to carry silence like a strategy. In boardrooms, in briefings, in airports. Even when I got pulled aside randomly while traveling in uniform 3 times in 1 year. I let it go. I let it go because I had rank, because I had control, because I had things to protect. But tonight felt different. Tonight, it wasn't just disrespect. It was deliberate. I replayed the moment in my head. His smirk, the citation, the hunger in his eyes when I didn't flinch. That wasn't about law. That was about power. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Hands steady. Movements precise. Then I sat down at the table, pulled out my phone, and opened the video I had recorded during the stop. No sound at first, just the harsh white of headlights in the dark. Then his voice, sharp and short. "Step out of the vehicle." My voice, calm. "Is there a reason I'm being detained?" His tone tightened. Mine didn't. I watched the whole thing, start to finish. And when it ended, I just stared at the screen, because there it was. Not just the moment he crossed the line, but the moment I realized I was done pretending that line didn't matter. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't make a scene, but I was going to respond, not in anger, in record, quiet power, precise steps, and this time, no silence. By morning, I had a plan. I slept maybe 3 hours, if you can call it sleep. Mostly I lay in bed, eyes open, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling like slow truths. The adrenaline was gone. The silence wasn't, and in that silence, I found clarity. I've never been the type to act out of impulse. I don't throw words into the wind hoping they land right. I gather facts. I document. I build from the ground up. That's how you lead. That's how you survive. So I started with what I had. The footage on my phone, time-stamped, clear. His voice, my voice, his tone, my posture. I saved it in 3 places. Phone, cloud, and a hard drive in the back of my desk drawer labeled, just in case. Then I checked the dashboard cam request process for his department. It wasn't public-facing, but I knew where to look. Years of watching others play this game had taught me the rules, even when they were hidden in fine print. I made the call to legal, not to escalate, to verify. A colleague I trusted picked up. I told him what happened. I didn't add emotion. I didn't editorialize. Just facts. "Do you have video?" he asked. "Yes." "Is it clean?" "Very." Silence on the other end. Then, "Okay, I'll walk you through the complaint process. Don't skip steps. Let the evidence speak." That's what this would be about. Evidence. Not a social media post, not a viral video, not a tearful press conference. Just the quiet, methodical machinery of accountability. I pulled out a blank legal pad, wrote the date. Then I started listing every detail I remembered, from the time I left the base to the moment I stepped back into my driveway. The exact words he used, the way his eyes narrowed when I didn't lower mine, every second of silence, every pause that meant more than words. Then I drafted the complaint. Title: Violation of Civil Rights During Traffic Stop, Sergeant Daniel Mercer. I read it 3 times, and then I clicked Submit. There was no dramatic music, no applause, just a soft email notification and the sound of my own breath. But something shifted, not in the world, not yet, but in me. I'd been trained to fight wars on foreign soil. That day, I started fighting one here, with discipline, with evidence, with receipts. Men like Mercer don't operate alone. They operate with backing, implicit, cultural, habitual, in the locker rooms, in the patrol car banter, in the way no one ever corrects them. You can feel it when they walk into a room. Not earned respect, just unchecked momentum. After the stop, Mercer went back to his precinct like it was just another night, tossed his citation pad on the desk, took off his belt like he was shaking off a long day of hard work. He laughed about it. Not in an evil, villainous way, just ordinary. That's the part that stings the most. "Gave me attitude," he told the rookie by the coffee machine. "One of those types. Thought she was better than the badge." He said it loud enough to be heard, because he expected to be agreed with, and mostly he was. A few chuckles, a few shrugs. One guy said, "You can't win with those. Just keep it moving." That's what they say to each other when they think no one's listening, but someone always is. That night, it was Officer Reyes, 2 years on the force, sharp-eyed, quiet. She didn't laugh. She didn't speak. She just watched. And then she asked, casually, "Did she give you her name?" Mercer shrugged. Didn't matter. Reyes walked away, but not before she typed something into her phone. And that was the first crack in the wall, because when she pulled up my name, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, the swagger turned into silence. She didn't say anything to him that night, but the precinct is smaller than it pretends to be. And in places like that, respect moves faster than truth. By the time Mercer got to his locker the next day, there was an envelope waiting, white, unmarked. Inside, a printed notice. Civil rights complaint filed, internal review pending. That's when the smirk started to fade, and for the first time, he realized the story wasn't over, not even close. It didn't happen fast, but it happened. These things rarely explode. They drip. One email, one inquiry, one signature at a time. That's how accountability moves, slowly but with direction. A week after I filed, I got a call from the Department of Civil Rights Oversight. They had received my complaint, reviewed the video. This isn't nothing, the investigator said. No emotion, just statement of fact. I didn't need it to be dramatic. I needed it to be real. He explained the process. Internal inquiry, followed by external review. If it passed both filters, it would move to the local DA. I nodded, listening, writing down every step. It felt like building something. Not for revenge, but for record. A quiet wall of truth. Mercer, on the other hand, didn't take it so well. Word reached him before the paperwork did. Someone in admin mentioned my name. He laughed at first. She's military? Who cares? Doesn't mean she gets a free pass. But then the envelope came. A plain internal memo signed and stamped. You are the subject of an official civil rights complaint. You are required to submit a written account of the incident within 48 hours. Do not contact the complainant. He read it twice. Then again, people say you can smell fear. I say you can see denial. He stormed into the lieutenant's office, raised his voice, demanded to know why it wasn't being handled internally. The lieutenant, older, weary, didn't lift his eyes. You picked the wrong one, Dan. That line stuck with me when I heard about it later. Not she was right, not this was wrong, just you picked the wrong one. As if abuse is expected, but occasionally inconvenient. Back on my end, I stayed focused. I wasn't celebrating, I was preparing. This wasn't the climax. This was the prelude, because I knew what came next. A hearing, depositions, maybe even a courtroom. And if that's where it was going, I'd be ready, not to fight, to stand, and to let the truth do what it always does when we give it the space, rise. I hadn't worn that uniform in almost a year. Not the standard fatigues, not the workaday base gear, the formal one. The one with the rows of ribbons, polished buttons, and history sewn into every crease. There are uniforms that say I serve, and there are uniforms that say I lead. I laid it out the night before. Jacket, skirt, low-shine shoes, and the citation bar my soldiers gave me on the last day of deployment. Not standard issue, not official. Just one line. She held the line so we could breathe. I almost didn't wear it. Not because I was unsure, but because I didn't want to perform. I didn't want to win the room with costume. I wanted the truth to speak. But then I thought of every woman I had ever mentored. Every black soldier who pulled me aside in tears after being told their tone was too sharp. Every civilian who never got a day in court. I wasn't walking into that courtroom alone, so I put it on. And when I stood in front of the mirror that morning, I didn't see perfection. I saw proof that I had earned my place, that I didn't have to shout to command a room. The courthouse was small, dated, pale green walls, flickering exit signs, a hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet. I could feel eyes turning as soon as I stepped through the metal detector. Not because of beauty, not because of spectacle, but because people know what presence feels like, even if they don't have the words for it. Mercer was already inside. He wore a suit, cheap, oversized, not a uniform, not a badge, just another man trying to look smaller than his actions. He didn't recognize me at first, but when he did, I saw it, that half-second of pause. The moment he realized that the woman he tried to erase was now standing 10 feet from him, upright, centered, and seen. No fear, no apology, no hesitation. The judge entered. People sat. The court clerk read the opening statement. Civil rights complaint filed by Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, United States Army, alleging unlawful conduct by Officer Daniel Mercer during a traffic stop on... I stopped hearing the date. I didn't need it, I was there. In my mind, I was back on that roadside, watching his hand hover near his holster, watching his face when I didn't flinch. I breathed once, long and slow. Then I stood when they called my name. The courtroom fell silent, not because I demanded it, but because that silence was earned. I walked toward the witness stand, each step echoing like a drumbeat. Not fast, not timid, just steady. A black woman in full dress uniform taking the seat reserved for truce. And when I sat down, the room wasn't watching a case anymore. It was watching accountability take shape. I took the oath. Right hand raised, left hand steady, my voice clear as stone. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There was no tremor, no pause, just the calm of someone who had waited long enough to speak. The prosecutor approached, young, white, sharp-eyed, and asked the usual questions: name, rank, service history. Then she asked the only one that mattered. Can you describe what happened on the night of October 18th? I looked at the jury. 6 strangers, 3 black, 1 Latina, 2 white, all watching me like they were still deciding whether I belonged on that stand. I spoke softly, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted them to lean in. I was stopped without cause. I was treated as a threat before I was spoken to. I was subjected to a field sobriety test despite showing no signs of impairment. I was cited without reason, and I was silent because I was trained to survive, not escalate. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that means people are listening with more than their ears. Discretion, I said, is a powerful thing, but without discipline, it becomes abuse. The prosecutor nodded, then motioned to the screen across the courtroom. We'd like to show the jury the phone recording made by Lieutenant Colonel Wallace during the stop. I sat back, hands in my lap, watching as the moment replayed, not in my memory, but in high-definition truth. The lights, the questions, his tone, my voice. I heard myself say, "Is there a reason I'm being detained?" I heard his reply, "You didn't lower your gaze." A ripple moved through the room. And then came the body cam, his angle, his face, his condescension, the way he smirked when he thought I was nobody, and the way he handed me the citation like it was a favor. No edits, no spin, just what happened. The silence afterward wasn't empty, it was dense. The judge cleared his throat. The prosecutor rested her hand on the table, eyes steady. Then she turned to Mercer's attorney. "Your witness." The man stood slowly, straightened his jacket, and walked towards me like I was going to crack under cross. But I'd stood through mortar fire. He was just noise. "Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, are you suggesting this officer intentionally profiled you?" "I'm not suggesting," I said. "I'm reporting." "You didn't raise a complaint at the scene." "I raised my camera, and I raised my composure. That's what survival looks like." He paused, looked flustered. I didn't move. "No further questions," he muttered. As I stepped down from the stand, I could feel the jury watching me, not like a victim, not like a symbol, but like someone who had just told the truth in full daylight. And there was nothing left to argue with, because the tape didn't lie, and neither did I. I'd already said everything I needed to say. My words were on record. My presence had spoken louder than any closing argument. Now it was his turn. Sergeant Daniel Mercer, 45, 10 years on the force, dozens of commendations. He took the stand with the same posture I remembered from that night. Chin high, shoulders square, like confidence could be faked if you pushed your chest out far enough. His lawyer started soft. "Sergeant Mercer, can you walk us through the events of the evening in question?" Mercer kept his eyes on the jury, like he was trying to win them with charm. "She looked tense when I pulled her over," he said. "I was concerned there might be something going on. Substance use, maybe." "Did she resist?" "No, but she was cold. Aggressive with her eyes, if that makes sense." That line drew a frown from one of the jurors. "Aggressive with her eyes," the prosecutor repeated when she stood. Mercer shifted. She stared me down. "Is that illegal, Sergeant?" "No, but it's unusual. Most people show a little more respect." "Did she raise her voice?" "No." "Did she insult you? Threaten you? Refuse to follow orders?" "No, but—" "So what exactly made you escalate the stop?" Mercer looked down for the first time. Then he said it, the line. The sentence that made the air change in the room. If I had known she was a lieutenant colonel, I'd have handled it differently. Silence. Complete. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Just to be clear, Sergeant Mercer, you're saying that had you known her rank, not her rights, not the law, but her status, you would have changed your behavior?" Mercer opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again. "I just mean, look, I'm not saying I mistreated her, look, you treat officers differently, right? You show deference." The jury was listening, not blinking, not moving. That was the moment. The line wasn't crossed with volume or violence. It was crossed with honesty. Unfiltered, entitled, exposed. I didn't look at him. I looked at the juror in the back row, black woman, maybe mid-50s. She nodded, just once, and I knew they understood. This was never about the law. It was about who he thought deserved it. The jury took 4 hours, not quick, not dragged out. Just enough time to weigh the truth with both hands. I stayed seated, calm, still, the same way I'd stood on the side of that road. I didn't check my phone. I didn't glance around the courtroom. I just waited, because I already knew what they saw, and more importantly, I knew what he saw now. Mercer sat at the defense table, head down, no smirk left. The badge wasn't on his chest. The pride wasn't in his voice. He looked like a man who had finally realized he wasn't untouchable. When the foreperson stood, the room held its breath. On the count of unlawful detainment and violation of constitutional rights, "We find in favor of the plaintiff." There was no gasp, no shout of joy, just a quiet exhale, like a room letting go of something it didn't know it was holding. The judge thanked the jury. Damages were awarded, not excessive, but significant enough to make the record matter. The decision would be public, a mark on Mercer's file that no desk job could erase. A training program was announced the following week, mandatory, department-wide. And though I wasn't there to hear it, I was told Mercer's name was mentioned in the first session, as a case study. Not a villain, not a scapegoat, just an example of what happens when authority forgets accountability. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. I walked past them. No statement, no performance. Just one sentence to a young reporter who caught up to me on the steps. She asked, "Do you feel justice was served?" I looked at her, not with triumph, not with rage, just with truth. "I didn't come for justice. I came for the record." Justice. That's what happens next. And then I left. Not victorious. Not defeated, just whole. The citation that began it all. Thrown out. The silence that once protected me. Broken, but with purpose. And Mercer? He left by the side door, avoiding the crowd. No cameras, no applause. Just a man walking away from the echo of his own choices. He wore a suit. I wore the truce. A few weeks later, I was back at the base. Same walls, same cadence, same daily noise of routine. But I wasn't the same. Something had shifted, not broken, just clearer. One of my young recruits, Private Evans, knocked on my office door. Nervous. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Have you ever been afraid in uniform?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window. Sunlight across the parade field, boots moving in formation. I thought about that night. The silence, the restraint, the choice. Then I looked back at her. "The uniform doesn't make fear disappear," I said. "It just reminds you not to let fear decide who you are." She nodded, swallowed something she didn't want to say. "Thank you, ma'am." She left, and I sat there a little longer, letting the quiet settle around me. We train soldiers to carry weight, rucksacks, weapons, loss. But there's another kind of weight we never write into the manuals. The weight of being judged before you speak. The weight of having to prove you deserve respect you already earned. The weight of choosing stillness when anger would be easier. I've carried all of that, still do. But now I carry it with purpose, because I know every time I walk into a room, I'm not walking in alone. I'm walking in with every woman who didn't file the report, every soldier who stayed quiet to keep their rank, every civilian who never got their day in court. And I carry them like I carry everything else, with my spine straight, with my voice measured, and with the quiet kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself, because it's already survived what tried to silence it. Respect isn't something you wear. It's something you prove. Every damn day. And I'll keep proving it, so the next one behind me doesn't have to.